Network, you'll discover the truth about what's really happening on our planet. Get instant access to our written news, UNN newscasts, world situation reports, and in-depth stories from our field messengers. Manifest your amazing abilities as we explore the new Earth. Plus, original series to inspire and encourage you throughout your day. Get connected through United Chat, our personal chat room where you can join the conversation, share your experience, and also submit your questions for Kim. Watch United Network at home or on the go through your computer, favorite online streaming program, or mobile apps.
Welcome to United Network News.
Start your free trial today. UnitedNetwork.Earth, bringing people together.
And now, the World Situation Report with Kimberly Gogan from the Office of the Guardian. Who were the gatekeepers? And how does this relate to the black and white checkerboard symbols the global deep state likes to use in all of their buildings? There has been a change in the Arks of the Covenant. But what exactly does that indicate? And will that change be assigned to the global deep state that it's really over?
Now here's Kimberly Gogan with the Office of the Guardian. Hey, Kim, welcome.
Welcome. Well, you've been here. I just got here. Okay. All right. Well, happy Friday.
Yeah.
We are officially within the 3 days of the lunar eclipse that takes place on Sunday night, our time here in the U.S., into Monday morning. Yeah. A lot of stuff going on the last couple of days. As more and more of their stuff fades away, and for good reason, and I'll talk about that in the second part of the news. There finally was a call yesterday afternoon between the Rothschild dragon families Ital and the Silent Circle and the Black Nobility, where they started calling each other out on the lies. You know, one group said they were going to be in charge come the eclipse. They didn't mention which one, and that was a lie. And the other people turned over a bunch of stuff to them that didn't work anymore.
Yeah, I can imagine what they said to each other. Probably not too nice of words.
Not too nice of words. Yeah, they did. And then they came to absolutely zero conclusions about what they were going to do, which is pretty normal. They just apparently wanted to yell and scream at each other for their failures. They also appear to be, at least on the people, I guess should say, the level of the folks that are still willing to work with them or for them, because there are a few, planning on starting a war in Taiwan. And it's... it's heating up a little bit. The war in Taiwan is not about Taiwan at all, and it's not about China per se. It's about engaging two major superpowers, being the United States and China, into a war.
Okay.
That is what it is about. You can think reminiscent of the Cold War days where we had two superpowers fighting against each other, except this would not be a Cold War. This would be a hot war, which would obviously continue on into both respective countries. At least that's their plan. They claim that the war in Ukraine is dying down. And that didn't work out. It wasn't enough to start World War III, but they feel that this will be. There is nothing left in Taiwan that anybody wants, except for some computer chip making companies, which those have pretty much already been divided up and controlled by the deep state anyway, over there in Taiwan. But it is starting to heat up, so I thought that it was worth mentioning. Without funding, which they are a firm believer that the funding shall come apparently sometime around the 28th, which would be 3 days after this lunar eclipse. Wow, what a coincidence. And there's a lot of talk everywhere right now about a lot of changes happening. This is amongst the deep state and those that are still following by April 1st. So I'm based on what I'm hearing at the higher level, they anticipated that they would have money or some kind of power and control coming. On the lunar eclipse, not even so much the solar eclipse. So I don't see anything happening except a complete reversal. Mm-hmm. There was a few things that they were banking on, and one of them being they still fail to recognize the fact that they are not the gatekeepers of this planet. And the line of Solomon is not the guardian of this planet. They have not been for a long time. And as guardians and gatekeepers, this allowed them certain amounts of tasks, duties, and things they were capable of doing with the cooperation of source and anti-source. Mm-hmm. At the time, depending if we were in a neutral age or a dark age. Obviously, in a dark age, they all worked for anti-source. Right. So there are remnants of a hopeful system that would return in totality had to do, and we've talked about it before, but I'm going to reiterate it because it's important to what's happening right now, had to do with the white knight, black knight system. And then there were colored knights, 8 colored knights in between the two. And the white knight, black knight system was a dual system of black and white portals that were able to access planes of existence within computer systems. Okay. Although there was no access, you could still see until yesterday a remnant of what looked to be like a checkerboard, an entire field within computers. I know, isn't that what a coincidence? Yeah. Within AI systems, but which tied in both black and white AI systems, so source and anti-source systems, alpha and omega systems. Also, to some degree in the past, this would have also affected the gateways in Earth, in 0 Point Earth. And in part, why you see a lot of people talking on the internet, like the Freemasons and the 33rd degree Masons and these types of folks, all having checkerboards on their floors, and they're really partial to those checkerboards pretty much everywhere. And it's not just the Freemasons, it's all different groups that we see when they depict the pictures of where the Illuminati chair is. It was underneath Coutts Bank in London. You also saw the checkerboard floor. When you were watching movies like Lara Croft, and even on the internet, you always see the checkerboard floor. So the checkerboard is indicative of the white and black knight portal system that would take you in either direction.
Did you notice, Kim, that Q has adopted, I don't really follow Q, but they changed their website. Now they have a shop section because, Trump Bucks isn't bringing in as much revenue anymore. And they have shirts with just checkerboard patterns on them.
Yep. And this has to do with the SSP folks, ETAL, that run the Q program, and their affiliation with the white knight, black knight gatekeeper system. Okay. You remember how they mentioned on there, we are the gatekeepers, we are the 9. Yeah. You would have had 9 up and down, 9 down. Mm-hmm. But there's also, so you can talk about portals and computers, which they would have access to. They were the gatekeepers as to who could pass in one direction or the other. That would be, if you were to look at the system when we started, you would have seen a plane of existence, which would be source or alpha system, and you would have seen a plane of anti-existence, which would have been the omega system. Mm-hmm. So you would have seen what looked like a chocolate and vanilla layer cake going all the way up and all the way down because they were intertwined. Even though one overshadowed the other for a time, you would have seen those come together in a nice lattice work, so to speak, or a layer cake. Mm-hmm. And then in between them, going I would say, horizontally to the vertical cake, if we're looking at a cake, you would have seen a space in between that was specifically for all the colors of the gatekeepers.
Okay.
The gatekeeper program was installed for computer systems on Earth in 1948, and it existed. Its predominant area of the world where it existed was underneath Tel Aviv in Israel. So this was the main location for all of planet Earth for the gatekeeper program, although we also had part of that in the United States and in other areas of the world to make 9 main locations in totality to some degree or another that could act as a barrier between the dark and the light. Now, I'm going to kind of get into a little bit more about this and tell you a story about something that happened earlier today so that you can understand the confusion that the old gatekeepers have and that the old line of Solomon has as guardian. Because as guardian and as gatekeepers, they would have the right to do certain acts as it relates to the usage of the main gateway between the Alphaverse and the Omegaverse known as planet Earth. And the rules of the road, as far as they know it, as far back as they know, were that the dark and anti-source could use the gateways only. Now, let's talk about its connection. So today, there is a World Bank also in London, although the headquarters is in the United States, as you know. And underneath that World Bank, they had stolen many, many years ago an Ark of the Covenant. Now, for those of you that have been following for a while, this might be repetitive, but there are 7 minor Arks of the Covenant on the planet. There is not just the one. Now, there are 2 major Arks of the Covenant on the planet as well that were non-accessible by the gatekeepers.
What makes it, Kim, a major versus a minor?
Okay, I'll explain that to you. So let's go back to stories we know, so then I can tell you how this ties into why they're confused and what they're still trying to do. Okay, so the 2 major arcs contain, one is for source and one is for anti-source. They essentially contain the essence of the full essence of one or the other. Wow. Now, in a dark age, they both would be dark. In a light age, they both would be light. And this was part of the Ark of the Covenant, which necessarily doesn't have anything to do with a human being. It has to do with gateway control. And then there were 7 minors, which were accessible to some degree by the gatekeepers. Now, in a dark age and per subsequent agreements with the Order of the Black Sun and the Line of Solomon, known as the Order of the Dragon, and still the Order of the Black Sun, respectively, they were able to utilize the power of the arcs to control the gates. It's gateway control. At least so they thought. So they would take these arcs and move them to specific locations to where they would have more access to, for example, the financial system. Hence the one that they took and stole out of India, out of Tibet, and moved it, which, okay, debatable, China, Tibet, India, Tibet, big,
Right.
It's been going on for ages, and then move it to underneath the World Bank in London to create themselves a gateway so that they could possibly access the highest levels of things from the World Bank. No shock there. Now, all 9 of these were dark for a very long period of time.
So the Ark of the Covenant that we read about, for example, in the Bible,
Yes.
at that time, it was a dark covenant? It was a dark ark?
It became dark, yes.
Okay.
Remember, the 12 tribes of Israel, were of source.
Right.
It just depended on which side of source. Solomon went dark, and then therefore everybody else went dark. And to be fair, it was a dark age. But Earth he could have come and created balance. He did not. That's not what they chose.
Right.
So the ark being in Israel and then moving eventually to Japan, this particular one that we're referring to, is no surprise here.
Right.
Moving it to Japan and Mount Fiji was no surprise. It was one of the darkest portals on Earth.
So a minor arc has like part of the essence. I'm still trying to figure out the difference between a major and a minor. So what would a minor would be able to do less, obviously, than a major arc?
Right. And due to the Emerald Covenant, where we had colors, which is basically a separation of color itself, white or black, or the combination of the two is how we create colors through prisms. And the 7 minors during the Dark Ages would have had different color essence, energy, consciousness, matter. So it was a piece of source, not all of source or anti-source.
Okay.
You see?
Yeah.
So, yes. So having the 7 minors in different locations where they do not belong, and the 2 majors, having them be dark, was, I guess you would say, how they controlled the gateways. They used these as part of the Ark of the Covenant, as appointed by secondary covenants of source or anti-source, is what made them gatekeepers. That's what made them, the line of Solomon, so important in part, and that's what made the gatekeepers so important in part. Now, not that long ago, within the last couple of years, those arcs all started to turn, as we've been talking about returning to the age of light, returning the planet to source. Those arcs have all turned to light now.
Okay.
It's just that in order to stand in the presence of the ark and open the ark, now there's a difference between standing in the room with something and standing in the room when the ark is open. That is something completely different.
Okay.
So if in the presence of an anti-source full arc, so the level 9, for lack of a better term, the highest level of source or anti-source, you would either have to be from that density or have that much purity in you in order to survive standing in front of an open ark. Now, on the flip side of it, and you know the stories, you heard the stories about people turning to dust, and all that's very true, because remember, the main location for the Gatekeeper program was based in Israel.
It's interesting when these stories start to come together and you're like, that's why. That makes sense.
They do. We didn't have, it wasn't so relevant to computer systems as it was to the gates and Earth prior to, we're talking thousands of years ago when these stories were written, right? Allegedly. Right. It was more relevant to computers after 1948 with the installation under Tel Aviv. But that's why it was originally located there.
Okay.
Main gateway, main dark gateway for all of planet Earth in Israel.
Right.
No surprise there. Now, to stand in the presence of, you know what it's like when you're standing in the grocery store and you're standing around a very negative person. And then if you get around a person that's so negative, they're like they do black magic, or they're, clearly messing with some evil stuff. I mean, it almost is like 2 magnets repelling each other. Yeah. Like you're feeling a push, you're feeling an energy push when you're around that person. And they are the exact opposite, of you. So take that negative experience you're having at the grocery store or with a person who's just got a negative attitude and amplify it times 1,000, and then take it to a whole nother level when you're standing in front of one of these arcs.
Okay.
Now, we know that I signed my agreement to become the guardian after the other agreement expired back in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of eliminated their ability for the guardianship of Earth. But I also am the gatekeeper. So that's been for now, 4 or 5, 6 years. So the arcs turning light was an indication of the turning back over of the planet to source. Therefore, this gentleman was surprised this morning when he walked underneath the World Bank and it was no longer dark.
Because which gentleman are we talking about now?
I won't say much about him because he's not a bad person, this person.
Okay.
He was cannon fodder.
Okay.
Because none of the elites or the alleged people that call themselves the gatekeepers wanted to dare step in front of it. So they gave the guy what he needed to open it.
Okay.
They thought, and told him to open it. They would like to open the gates. And the guy called them up and explained to them that this is not a dark gateway. This is a light gateway. There is light here. This is golden. It's light. I don't know what you're talking about. Do you still want me to open the light gate? He was pretty nervous, to be fair.
I bet. Yeah.
Because he knows the ramifications. If it's basically a suicide mission, you could call him, he was not going to come back from that. So apparently he got off scot-free because the covenant is no longer needed. Because we don't have, okay, let me kind of explain. So the actual arc of the covenant itself had to do with gateway control on Earth made from the beginning of time itself, meaning the beginning of the creation of anti-source itself.
Okay.
Between source and source.
Right.
And neutral source, for that matter, eventually was the separation between the two universes. So the turning back of these to light and then the eventual switching off of the arcs, which also happened earlier today, was indicative of the fact there is no longer a need for a gatekeeper, essentially, because we don't have anywhere to go down anymore. Yeah. Therefore, there is only one way. So trying to control how much darkness comes in, how much light comes in, to the planet is no longer a thing, and it's no longer an issue. There's only one way now. There's only one light. There's only one source. And as far as getting us to this point, that was the job. Remember the Giver of Life Declaration and the restoration of not only Earth, but the multiverse in his likeness. Right. So once that process is 100% complete, then there is no need for these anymore. Hence, in my opinion, part of the reason why this agreement expired earlier today, like very early in the morning U.S. time. So by source itself.
Did you have a heads up that it was going to expire, or did it just kind of happen?
Not a clue.
Okay. Is there a way to tell if it was supposed to expire at a different time, or does it not have like a date like that on it?
So source and source agreements are written essentially in essence.
Right. Okay.
And since they are written in the essence of source and anti-source, even when you go directly to source and ask for the agreement, or he'll say, look, hey, here's the agreement. You're either permitted to read it or you're not permitted to read it. So back, it's been almost 10 years now, 9 years ago, when I signed my contract in preparation for the expiration in 2018 as guardian. I was not permitted to read that contract. It was a long scroll with a lot of writing on it, that's for sure. And the only thing I could read was December 2nd through 7th, 2018.
Did that make you nervous at all to sign something? Or you just knew that it was source and source had
Well, source gave it to me.
Yeah.
And the only constant in my entire life that has never wavered from day one of our connection is source. I was kind of, being human, I'm like, hey, what's this all about? I at least had to ask, right? What is this for?
Yeah.
It's what it's all about.
We're trained not to sign contracts before reading them.
I know. But, and so I signed it. I mean, obviously I wasn't told. And I'm glad I wasn't told, honestly, because if I had known everything that I had to go through from that point to today, I'm not so sure I would have been like, whoa, you got the wrong girl. There's somebody else here. Anybody want to take this? Did anybody else? I must have drawn the short straw, But honestly, it's been a journey. It's been a road. It's been a learning experience for me. And, I think hopefully this has been a learning experience for all of you too. But no, I was not told ahead of time that this was going to expire today. But it did. It expired around noon GMT time, I think, today. So therefore, once it was finally ratified in the Hall of Records that it had expired, because I get those agreements, he turns them over, he expires them or terminates them, and then I ratify them, then the arcs are no longer functioning.
What does that mean? Does that mean anyone can open them? They're now relics? They're
they're coffee tables. They're pretty coffee tables with a little chair and some wings on top. They're very pretty.
I kind of like to have one in the UNN studio when we get it. So
we should. You know what, Sunny? That should be your new seat you sit on when you do the news. What do you think?
Better than their chairs that they get, the dark, and sit in your booty on this chair and see if a demon comes out. I'd much rather use the Ark of the Covenant.
I know. Well, honestly, and this is no disrespect, but they, and we say this jokingly, of course, but they serve their purpose. They were of source. Mm-hmm. They're made of a very specific metamaterial that is allowed to contain the pure essence, energy, consciousness, matter, frequency, crystalline time or anti-crystalline time, depending on which section you're in, and of source.
Yeah.
So it's a direct indicator to us that we are moving right along as far as restoration is concerned. Mm-hmm. Not needing those anymore tells us that we must be fresh out of gateways and fresh out of checkerboards.
Mm-hmm. No one gave Q the memo, though. Maybe they'll watch.
No, they didn't. Well, maybe they can just sell blank white shirts now.
Yeah. Or blank black, because that seems to be where they're going.
Well, but there isn't any more blank black. So now it just looks kind of like a white field. It's not a checkerboard field anymore. It's kind of like a white field. So.
Okay.
Yeah. So they could just sell like a big square with a white. They don't work here. They don't want to work here. They don't want to work with us at all. So they prefer to live in a fantasy. But this that has happened, although it would be cool to have some. I mean, I do know where they are, as I've told you before. And if you're new here, this might be new for you. I actually have stood in front of one of the majors before. When I first kind of started this part of the journey, I call my life now. And what an experience it was. For me, it was life-changing.
So you were standing in front of the Ark of the Covenant, one of them. You said it was one of the major ones. So that had to be an ark that was either light already or changing into light, because you wouldn't have survived standing in front of a dark Ark of the Covenant, right?
That's right. So remember, it's completely source, and whether you're talking to source or anti-source, it could go either way.
Right.
Okay, so there's two on the planet that can go either way, and like attracts like. So when I saw it, it was completely 100% pure white light.
Okay.
Because source can appear either way. The only one that has control in the multiverse of these arcs is source. So in the absence of like attracting like, it would have been dark if there was somebody there of dark.
Oh, okay. All right. So
Source is source. There was only ever one. It's two halves of a whole, so to speak.
okay.
Or three halves when you say, or not halves, I'm sorry, 3/3 of a whole when you add in the neutral part to it. But yes, it can go either way. It could have appeared either way.
Oh, I see. So what were they trying to test? Do you have any idea why they opened it? Why you were standing in front of it?
You know, so, I was in Asia and was doing some business there, or I thought I was, and was having a tough time with the families. This is where I was first learning about dragon families and all these different families, and was led to believe they were good folks and of the divine. But that's when I started learning about two sides of a divine somewhat, because I'm like, these are not good people. Matter of fact, being around those people, their energy feels like the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Like it actually makes you dizzy. Like it's weird. It's like an electromagnetic disturbance in your peripheral, unless you're you can shield up and that kind of thing. But it's really bad. Like it's not like I just met, this person that's really negative, bad. I mean, it's like a vortex spinning in the opposite direction of yours. That's just like pushing you all around and, your head spinning and so on and so forth. Now, then this guy comes up to me and he says, nothing, but his translator said, "Come with us." And somehow I'm like, well, it can't be any worse than where I'm at right now. Like, maybe I'm going to go find something better. Maybe this will be something different. And after quite a bit of a drive, quite a bit of a journey, and then about a 10-mile hike, we landed into this hole in the ground with some stone stairs. Went down the stairs, and there were other people in this room. A couple of people came over and opened it up. Now, the man was Asian. He was kind of a darker skinned Asian man. I have no idea. Never saw him again. And he stood behind me, and then, they opened it up, and that's what I saw was the bright white light. Now, after I kind of came to, because it's kind of awe-inspiring, to see. For me, it was anyway, because I'd never seen anything like that on the planet before, other than, traveling to source, in different ways. But to see it like right in front of your face was just, so when I finally kind of snapped out of like, oh my God, I'm in a hole in China somewhere, there was no one else left in the room. I'm like, where did everybody go? I mean, I had heard the stories about it. I assumed that's what I was looking at. And then the guy behind me was the man that didn't speak. He didn't speak any English. He kind of like used me as a shield, I guess, and just stood there. So it kind of goes along with the story of, and this is what I think it actually was, because Marduk once told me a story about the first time we met. I was about 8 years old, and he reminded me of the story many years later when we talked. And he told me that I could have gone either way. They knew I was here, and I could have gone to complete darkness, or I could have gone to complete light. I could have served either side. And part of me thinks, looking back at the experience, were they checking to see if it lit up dark or it lit up light?
Yeah.
Because they knew that was my connection here. Marduk used to call it 99.8% pure, closest to the source. But I'm wondering if they thought that they could sway me to their side at that point.
Yeah.
You know, which side was I on anyway?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the guy that was standing behind me, he kind of shook his finger and he said, you know, like, I told you so. You know how like your parents do, they smile at you and shake their finger, you know, I told you so. And I'm not sure what that was all about. I don't know if it was the families that I was sitting with that were trying to turn me dark or sway me to their side, and he was trying to find out which side I was on, or he was pointing out the fact of which side that I had already chosen. I'm not felt like it was a test.
Yeah,
for sure. So I do believe there's something to that. You know, it kind of goes along with the old saying about the white wolf and the black wolf, and, you know, which one wins, the one that you feed. And I think of humans in much of the same way. You know, I mean, we're all human. Of course, I'm human. But I really, truly think that this is almost like a way to test that to a very high degree. You know, as to how much light or how much dark is in a human. Now, for a long time, it's not your fault. You know, it's really not. Meaning, you know, they were throwing so much at us all the time, and still, I guess, are trying to some degree, and most of it fails nowadays. And it's getting lighter and lighter and lighter, and people are getting lighter and lighter and lighter. So I'm not. You know, would any human ultimately, if they were still working as a tester, be able to stand in front of it and turn it one color or another? Should be eventually. Yeah, should have been. But that's an interesting, I never really thought about that until today either. I'm like, well, it was pure white for me, but they were all dark, you know, at one point in time.
Yeah, it's interesting. I kind of feel like I wish we had one of those. It doesn't have to be a huge Ark of the Covenant, but I wish we had one of those things that we could, you know, point at people and be like, how much light, how much darker in you?
I know, right?
I want to carry that in my back pocket.
I know. It's like, we don't want that.
Yeah, exactly.
Not gonna date you. No way. That would be something from Match.com or one of those dating sites, wouldn't it? You know?
Exactly.
Look, I'm, you know.
It's on your profile, how much percentage light you are.
I know.
Hey, maybe it's going to be an invention in the near future. Who knows?
Yeah. You know, you could always say, well, you know, there's Mr. 70% dark, but I'm sure there's Mrs. 70% dark as well, you know,
that's a
out there
website
for them. That could be a thing in the future. But I never really thought about it until today, you know, when I started going through and then learning more about, I mean, what the covenant actually did, why the gatekeepers still think they're gatekeepers. I think they were trying to figure out, you know, when they saw it, either they saw it change or something, they were trying to figure out if they still were gatekeepers, if they could still turn it dark, maybe.
But can't they get that information from the archivists, or they're just not interested in real information anymore?
Well, the only reason why I personally feel, this is just my personal opinion from what I've seen. Now, this could be true or not true, but most of the systems that exist on this planet were of darkness. So that's your SSP people. They were birthed out of darkness. They're still dark. You know, the Order of the Dragon, obviously, Khazarian Mafia, whatever you call them, they're dark. The governments were birthed out of darkness. All security systems were birthed out of darkness. And the gatekeeper people and the watchers were no different. So I think their test today, by putting that guy in there, you know, trying to see if he could open it, and they wanted to see if it would turn dark.
Yeah. So what happened with him? It was turned off. So he
got off scot-free.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because he would have probably gone down, right? That.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
it
yeah.
wasn't going to work out well for him.
No, not in any way. No. So you can kind of see what I mean by the different degrees.
Yeah.
The guy at the time that was standing behind me seemed, I don't know, happy about it, I guess, in a way.
He's like, this is about to get interesting.
I know. He probably knew more. And who knows if that was even a person? I don't know. He looked like a old Asian man, kind of shorter than me, if that is even possible. Probably definitely around 5 foot or under, for sure. Because he was, came up to about my shoulders. But yeah, it was interesting. It was an interesting trip. But then for it to come up again today, and what were they testing for? And I'm guessing it happened today because it had something to do with a back-to-back lunar eclipse, solar eclipse, some old knowledge that they had, and us being within 3 days of that full moon.
Okay.
And would it turn dark? If you put somebody that's not of pure light, would it turn dark? Or would it turn neutral? Is it a possibility for it to have turned a shade darker gray, but still light? Was it going to go? I almost see it like, as a Geiger counter now. I mean, I only saw it personally one way in front of my face. So I didn't really realize that that's kind of what it was until today, that it seems to be some kind of a gauge as to which direction, source is going on this planet.
Wow.
Which kind of makes sense. And then the expiration of the covenant, there really is no need for a gatekeeper anymore. So I can finally put that hat down and put it in the closet and say, yep, did that, and put it next to the T-shirt, that I got for everything else. So
exactly.
Kind of exciting. But it's a good indicator for us too. One thing I'll say about the one that I saw in London is, interestingly enough, is they did not open it. It was never open. It was not open. But it did appear to have some kind of a small quantum tunnel that would come from inside the box to kind of the place between where the wings were on this particular one that they had there. And it showed a small diluted version of source in it. It didn't, it's like somehow, if you take you're doing a sample on a Petri dish, you take one of those really small pipettes and you just kind of put a drop in. That's what it looked like to me, except it was coming out of it. So I'm not sure what they did to that thing. And I'm sure it was to serve their purposes, but somehow, and at the World Bank too. I mean, I guess nothing surprises you these days, as far as their mechanism and their places and what they intend to do. But they were hoping somehow that they would get some access to something. I do know that one of the things that they are telling people is that they will have access to the alpha system. That is being said, in quite a few places right now. So that would be a no. Also, the reason why they brought a group, not this morning, but at 2:30 in the morning yesterday, my time, they had brought in a group of what they consider, they're from a place called Lodge 999. And Lodge 999 breeds black magic workers that are far superior to those of the Jedi program here in the States. And they specifically are psychic assassins, for lack of a better term. So I saw the helicopter come in. I saw them come in. And they said they were here with authorization, and they didn't get the information locally here that they were not until much later. There's also been a fight, like as I told you the other day, about people wanting to take over the zone. Well, these people were here to manipulate me to use the system so they could pretend on their end of it that I worked for them, or just ignore the fact that I ever existed. which they like to do too, and claim that they're the ones that transferred the money for the war. They're the ones that did this, just like Trump did.
Why do they have to be close? You would think that they could do their assassin work from wherever.
It wasn't working for where they were from. So they're based in Germany, is where they're from, but they felt that if they had moved in closer, that perhaps they could be more effective.
Okay. That goes against like everything quantum, but okay.
Yeah. Well, they're at a loss.
Yeah, I know.
At this point, they've been trying to do their job. Most everybody succumbs to the people, to those people, one way or another. If they're trying to kill you, you'll die. They're very effective at what they do. I ran into these people in 2010 in Germany, so that's how I know who they are. Mm-hmm. But anyway, the point is that I guess that was the reason. They were told to come here for that purpose, so that they could drive me around like an avatar, apparently, is what they wanted to do, and get me to do what the black nobility wanted me to do.
So they landed. Did they stay long?
2:39 a.m. I would say they finally got a hold of the people they claimed to have authority from, probably at about 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. And I would say they were gone within an hour or two after that. But when it comes to these people, there's a different way of shielding yourself that proves very helpful. And then I would say you can give them a firm warning. So, you're very familiar with how to shield yourself, and you're kind of putting yourself in a bubble and kind of protecting anything from coming in and getting at you. Well, these people have a way to poke, not so much through your shield, but they have a way of using it against you. So, kind of like when you have one of those stress balls, and you take your finger and you push in on it, you can make an indent.
Yeah.
Which can also still push your energy to some degree and somewhat achieve their objective. But if you turn that shield around, it actually becomes more like a deflector.
Yeah.
So everything that they send to you goes back to them.
Okay.
And then you cut the cord, because they do try to install the cords, if not to yourself, then to your shield. And then you pull it, and then now you've got them. Okay. So you've got them by the solar plexus.
Yeah.
Which is almost better than,
What, Kim? What were you going to say? No, just kidding.
Nothing, Sonny.
So that's what you did? That's what you did with these guys?
Well, yeah, you have to, and then you give them a few firm warnings, and eventually they start feeling like they wanted you to feel, whatever that is. They start feeling dizzy. They start feeling sick. They start feeling like they're out of their element, and they start feeling like they may not be here much longer, because one more push and one more. Yep. So that's kind of how you deal with those people. It's on that level, they're pretty strong, I must say. But you can use this technique for other people, other types of things you're feeling, that kind of thing too, to deflect that out. And there's nothing against natural law of something
defending
that somebody
yourself.
Throws out comes right back to them. So,
yep,
whatever that is. Mm-hmm. That's the only reason why I followed through and continued to talk about it. So that was their original plan. And then by yesterday, they started yelling at each other.
That's how it always ends.
Yeah. Can we fake it till we make it? Can we say that, we are in control of the alpha system if we could control her like an avatar? That was the plan.
Yeah.
No, you can't. That's the answer. Absolutely. No, you cannot. So, and that's about it for the World Situation Report. The financial system isn't getting any worse. As far as the people are concerned, there's nothing. They have not managed to take anything from anyone's accounts as far as any to cause a major run on the banks or anything. The banks themselves are very nervous and upset. the black nobility's upset. Dragon families are upset. That's, as far as we're concerned, we're moving forward. The Ark expiring, the Covenant expiring today was positive news for us. The fact that we don't need it anymore would be a direct indication that we are probably fresh out of dark gates. Now, are they going to take that as what it is and understand what that meant? They'll probably go try to find all the rest of them, and
Yeah.
So.
But if they went to the gates, would they be able to tell that they would never do what they wanted them to do, or they weren't dark?
Yes.
Okay.
They would see that they're not dark. They did not turn dark, and they're not going back. They would see that they're off actually now.
Okay.
But are they going to get what that really means, though?
Mm-hmm.
That's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Is that going to be enough of an indicator to make them turn around?
Right.
I'm not sure. These people seem to be a little slow and a few sandwiches short of a picnic most days. So I'm not sure. It could be, the checkerboard going away. They finally figured out they don't have a checkerboard anymore, except for the vinyl flooring in the Mason temple. But maybe that's why they finally went to go check.
Yeah, could be.
So one can hope, but we'll see what happens. By the next time we talk, there'll be a full moon eclipse, a lunar eclipse first, and then the solar eclipse would be after. So we'll be speaking on Monday by the time that's passed. So we'll see what kind of weekend we have. Hopefully it won't be as bad as the last one.
Yeah.
No, other than that, you enjoy your weekend, and maybe we'll have a pleasant Easter next weekend, if that's something you celebrate.
Yeah, that's right. That's coming up. So not this week. So next, what is it, Sunday, U.S. time? A week from the Sunday?
It is for, except for Orthodox. Orthodox Christians, it'll be a week later.
Okay.
It's a week later. Mm-hmm.
All right.
Hope for all good things.
Okay. Thank you, Kim. Appreciate you.
Have a great weekend, Sunny.
Thanks. You too.